Hi guys, welcome to the video and welcome to this beastie here. This is the WINWING MCDU, which I bought a few weeks ago and I've been thoroughly enjoying it, so I thought I'd do a quick video on it with the pros, cons, etc. And give you my thoughts about the unit. Now in terms of the video, I'm going to try and keep it short, but these are the sort of things I'm going to be looking at. We'll look at the website with the price, tax, shipping, etc. The packaging, quick chat about that, the build in terms of the quality, the nature of the materials, etc. The software and the compatibility, and then finally I'll do a quick demo of the unit in operation so you can see it working. So first thing, as I say, we'll go and have a look at the website because it's quite a good website if I'm honest. Let's just get rid of that. Boo, and let's call this up then. So the WINWING website, I've never bought a WINWING product before, and I was aware of them, if you like, from the press, the media, but as I say, I didn't really know much about them or their products. One of the key things though is that I'm aware that they came in at a very affordable price point compared to a lot of the historic prices that we had to pay for hardware. So that's one of the things that piqued my interest. So hence why I've got my MCDU. Now, in terms of the units they sell, they do 4 units. They do a MCDU for the Airbus family. So it covers the A318 all the way through to the A340. I don't believe it's compatible with anything other than those types. So the 318, 319, 20, 21, 30 and 40. But as I say, I don't believe it's compatible with any other variants. The PFP3 November, I believe, is 737, looking at the colour. The 4, I would imagine, is a 747, and the 7, I would imagine, is a 777. Whether the 777 works with a 75 or a 76, I don't know. But as I say, anything like this, because of the expense, I would always urge that you go into the specifications and details and make sure that you're paying, what you're getting is what you're expecting. So making sure it's the right aircraft, for example, and the right software that you're looking at, so the right add-on, for example. The last thing you want to be doing is buying a Boeing FMC when actually you fly an Airbus A320 because they are not compatible with each other. So yeah, as I say, I've got the Airbus MCDU predominantly because that's the most frequent aircraft I fly. Anyway, the price is good, really good. £137.87. I think that's slightly higher than the EU or the US dollars, purely because of Brexit these days. But as I say, this isn't a particularly bad price at all. In fact, it's a very good price. Now that brings me on to taxes, shipping, global shipping, etc. I would strongly suggest that you double check what taxes you're going to need to pay, particularly if you go through the global shipping option. The reason I mention that is that I pre-ordered mine on the UK, United Kingdom. I don't live in Clapham, by the way, but I pre-ordered mine on the UK web page, and other people were getting their units and I wasn't. It was still saying that it was waiting for, it was still in pre-order, and I couldn't understand how other people were getting their units and I wasn't getting mine. And then when I was on the forums, somebody highlighted that actually there was an issue with the UK shipping, and you could get it if you went through global. I went through global, absolutely no bother whatsoever. But as I say, just make sure with whichever path you follow that you're familiar with the tax shipping and so on and so forth, particularly with global shipping. So because it may be that it arrives in your country and you then have to pay taxes before you can collect the item. So that's a thing I would urge. Just be careful and thorough with what you're doing with that, and that you're fully aware of everything. Let's have a quick look at the actual product itself. So this is the MCDU. The web page is very well done. It gives you an awful lot of information, everything about sizes, the fact it's 1-to-1 scale, all of the sales pitch that they would want you to know and be aware of. But what I would say is also very informative in terms of, for example, mounting options like we've got here. Very, very informative in that sort of thing. It also tells you what comes with the unit. The The only cable you need is the data cable. You don't need any other cables, and this was one of the attractions for me, was that if you've got a limited number of DisplayPort options out the back of your computer, so HDMI, DisplayPort, whatever it might be, you start running out of those if you don't have the most expensive PC. So I've got 4 ports, I've got 2 display, 2 HDMI, I run 2 monitors already, and I've got a VR headset, so I'm a bit short at the back. So this all of a sudden was like, oh, you know, the fact it doesn't use a display port option, this is now intriguing to me. So yeah, as I say, it only comes with the data cable, but if your system is set up how they suggest to set it up, that's all you need. And then the sticky feet, they are a highlight if I'm actually honest. But anyway, that's the web page. Gives you a lot of information, shows you the manual if you want to find out about the manuals and the dimensions and the downloads for SimApp Pro and the instructions for SimApp Pro, for example. But really, that's the only software you're going to worry about, the SimApp Pro application, which runs in the background and links the MCDU to all of the other stuff. Very, very nice indeed. Right, let's get the actual unit back up so we can have a look at stuff relating to that. If I can figure out how to press a button. Boom, there we go. So here's the unit. Packaging now. I can't show you the box because it's currently supporting my camera and holding my camera up. Such is the high-tech nature of my recycling in my workspace. But I can assure you it's nothing exciting. It's basically a brown cardboard box with WINWING written on it, various other text and information on it, but it's a very plain looking box. However, within the box there's a few things. There's obviously all the various components for the units themselves. They are held in shaped foam that makes sure that they're held safely and securely, and my unit arrived to me absolutely pristine, with no marks, scrapes, scratches or anything at all. So it's a very unassuming box, not really worth showing on camera, to be honest, because it's just a brown cardboard box. However, it did contain the following. These bits here are the various tools and various bits that you need for putting it all together. It is a faff to put together. I'll show you why in a moment when we have a look at the unit. These sticky pads, it provides 12, so in theory you could use 4 pads 3 times. What I will say, however, is they are super sticky. So I'll show you the effect of them in the unit. But I really struggled. This is a mouse mat, and I really like a textured material, soft textured material. I really struggled to get these off. So they're great. But it comes with a little spanner. It comes with, which is partly useless. I'll explain why with that as well. In fact, what's on the other side? Yeah, little spanner. Allen key, usual thing, and a stubby screwdriver, and various spare nuts and bolts depending on your mounting option. But functional, practical, sufficient for what you need to get the job done. And so, yeah, packaging, bits that come with it, absolutely fine. No issues at all. Right, the unit itself, in terms of build and build quality, it's plastic, so I think you guys can hear it, with rubberized or rubber keys, which, depending on where you are, so unlike, say, a tablet, you've got the tactile shape of the key to tell you. These are slightly dished so that you can know that your finger's on the center point. These are slightly dished, but these are recessed into this sort of surround. So these are the kind of buttons that you can't accidentally press, or in theory can't accidentally press. However, these are more open, and then down the side you've got your line select keys, and they've got solid plastic between the buttons, so in theory you shouldn't clip another button, because you'd be pressing solid plastic, so you should only be able to click the one button. As far as I'm aware, it's 1:1 real size, true scale, which is really nice. But as I say, the construction is a coloured plastic, so it's not painted, so it's not going to wear off or anything like that. It seems to be very good quality. There's a couple of little screws. The little screws are part of the construction. The bigger screws you can see are your mounting screws. So they're the same locations as you'd have mounting screws in the real world unit. as a word of caution, the little blue collars, so these little blue collars with the screws, they are separate to the unit. So there's a screw, it goes through the collar, in through the unit into a nut on the other side. They're quite fiddly, and I'll show you one of the issues with it is this angle here, this screw here with the collar, and then the nut is into this recess that you can barely get a finger into. You certainly can't get the spanner into there, so it's really fiddly because you can also see that the actual bolt doesn't extend that far through it. So is it a problem? No, it's just fiddly and irritating, but once you get it done, it's done. That's it. You can see on the back there's the 6 bolts, so 3 on each side, 1, 2, 3. This one on the bottom, because it's on a horizontal mount, it doesn't actually go through anything. You just put it there for, I suppose, for the aesthetics, and then the other 2 are holding these black legs. These black legs are multi-purpose legs. They're plastic again. You can see there's all sorts of different mounting holes in there. When you look on the website, you can see that you can mount it like that. You can mount it like that, albeit obviously my screen's upside down, so you can mount it that way. You can also mount it on other mounting options in relation to what you'd mount throttles on, for example, all that kind of stuff. So it's really flexible with its mounting options, and it's really straightforward. And you know, these aren't going to break. You're not going to damage them. Talking about build quality, as I say, the whole unit is pretty much plastic, rubberized. There's not a lot else to it, so it's a sturdy unit. It's a sturdy old unit. It's not delicate. But I mean, obviously, if you mishandle it inappropriately, it will break. But as I say, it's a solid enough unit that I think day to day there's no issues to be had with it. As I say, I've never had WinWing products before, so I don't know what their general reliability is. We will find out, I guess. But the screen itself sounds plastic. I don't know what it's made of, but it's not a touch screen, so really most of the time you're not going to be doing anything with the screen. The only issue I found with the screen is that on occasions, well, generally speaking, and I bring it around like this for a reason, the text doesn't seem to line up with the button, slightly offset. You get used to it, but it does mean occasionally you end up pressing the wrong button. So if you see the button there, if I straighten it up with the camera, the button is slightly higher or slightly raised compared to the text. It's most notable down here, maybe. But yeah, it's not a biggie, but it is noticeable. Is it enough to not buy the unit? Well, that's down to individuals, but for me it's not. The other thing I'm going to go through is at the back. This is one of the major positives for me. If you have a limited number of HDMI or display ports out the back of your computer, which my card does, it only has 4. Once you've got 2 monitors like me, plus I've got a VR headset, you start to run out of ports. So this uses a single USB 3 cable. You'll see there's no other cables. It's perfectly working. So that cable at the moment is providing both power and also the signal for the visuals. And because it's a built-in monitor, it's not like because it's a built-in screen and it's not like a separate TV monitor that's been put into a housing. It can do it off a USB 3 connection. So it's the oval sort of USB 3 pin. You can see it's got a green light to say it's got the power on. It's got a second port here, which is a power port. So if for whatever reason you've plugged it into a port and it wasn't getting enough power, you could put a USB-C power in there and that would also power it. However, their advice is, with this power lead, put it straight into one of the motherboard USB 3.0 or higher slots, and it should be absolutely fine. And it is. I've had no issues at all. They do say don't put it through a USB hub, and don't put it through the front connectors for your USB stuff in the computer. Just plug it in straight into the back. Now earlier on I mentioned about the P-clips for securing the cable, so you could secure the cable with the P-clips so that it doesn't come out adrift. The only thing for me is this is quite stiff, so it's very secure in there. However, if I were to go and get, I don't know, the 737 one, so I could fly a 737, rather than mess around trying to do it at the back of the computer or have two plugged in, I would want to just swap over this port, and I'm sure that it's going to be consistent across the four models. Mentioning the feet, these are the rubber feet. They are incredibly sticky. Because I've had this off the mouse pad quite a few times, mine are no longer sticky, but they still have a certain amount of grip. So if I flip it back over, come on beauty, you know you want to, you'll see that because of the way I've got it mounted, i.e. on the flat of the mouse mat, even if I press it and push it with a reasonable amount of force, it tries to stay where it is. The fact that obviously I'll be pressing the buttons vertically down then obviously helps me, but it's not going to be skidding along the mouse mat. I found that even though this is kind of a textured mouse mat that most things won't adhere to that well, it's also dusty and bleh. This thing stuck to it like a limpet, and it took a lot of effort to actually get it off in the first place, and then it was fine for the next 2 or 3 uses. Now it's completely devoid of any stickiness, but it's still got friction, so it's still particularly in this setup it's usable. If it was in a more vertical setup, then obviously it's more of an issue, but as I say, the website shows multiple configurations where it's got it flat, sat up, where it's got it in a like a unit, like you'd have it on a rig, and so on and so forth. So I'm really quite impressed with the sounds really weird. One of the most impressive bits is the rubber sticky pads, because otherwise you end up trying to figure out some sort of mounting solution, and this just makes it nice and easy. I would suggest that if you stick it to a glass or very shiny surface, it's going to be more of a pain to get off even than this. It's going to stick like a limpet, really is. As I say, the unit plastic, fairly robust. I've certainly not noticed anything that would make me query its build quality. The only thing I'd say is that the instructions aren't particularly clear at which screws go in which holes, etc. But you work that out eventually, and once it's done once, that's it, it's all done. So the screen, as I say, it's crystal clear, it's very nice. I've got no issues in terms of the quality of the screen or the displays. The colours, obviously being a MCDU in an Airbus, the colours can be quite important because different colours are used for different indications, whether it's orange, green, white, etc. The colours on this, whether they're 100% perfect to an actual Airbus, I don't know. I haven't got type rating, I've never flown an Airbus. But for a sim enthusiast, they're perfect. Unless you put that next to the real thing, in the real lighting conditions, I don't think it's going to be anything you could even quibble in regards to that. The keyboard, the only things I'm going to say is that, again, I've not been in a real Airbus, so I can't compare it like for like, but the keyboard's very tactile. These keys, so the letter keys and number keys, are dished, so you've got a nice positive positioning for your finger. These keys are recessed into this surround, so in theory you shouldn't be accidentally pressing these buttons. These are very recessed, the line select keys, so if you're off center you end up pressing the solid hard piece that's there. So I don't know if the camera's going to get it really, but you can see between each black button there's a raised solid part. So the 3D moulding of this unit is done to a very good standard, and it really does enhance the use of the unit. So if you were going to compare it to, say, using a tablet, whole different ball game. I've tried using a tablet with flight simulation, didn't get on with it because you're just pressing things on a tablet, whereas this, for me, in terms of the tactile physical nature of pressing things, it seems to be much better than using tablets and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, if you compare this to the price of a tablet, this is so much cheaper than a semi-decent tablet for flight simulation. In terms of the lighting, the keyboard lights up as well, as do the lights on the side. So the sort of message lights that you get across there and down there, they all light up when you have it set accordingly, and also the sim aircraft that's using it is set up accordingly. So yeah, the physical construction, the nature of the unit and using it seems to me to be absolutely great. Next thing I'm going to mention is software, which often is the Achilles heel of a lot of things, and things like this are no different. So let's have a look at the software. Let's bring this over, and the software is pretty good. Let's just get rid of that for a moment. We'll bring it back in a moment. The software's pretty straightforward. I'm not a software engineer, I just want it to be plug and play, and this is about as plug and play I've found as anything. Now obviously they do a number of products, so they've got things like key bindings, etc. We don't really need to worry about any of that stuff for what we're doing, but this is their initial settings screen, game configuration, default key binding, etc. Absolutely fine with that. It comes up as a reminder all the time. I just leave it just in case. I just like to see the green. Once it's green, we're all happy. Click on the product and it comes up with the information about the product. So if I can bring this over a little bit, I'll see if we can bring up the other screen as well, and we can have a look at, just even if we can't see all of it. You see across the top it's got this line going across. I've got no idea what it's all about, but it's showing, I assume, some sort of signals. Down the left hand side it's got the record log of keystrokes. Obviously it's got a visual pictorial representation of the product, and then across it's got test, calibration, firmware update, restore defaults. Calibration, obviously for this it's not really an issue. Obviously if you're getting a joystick or whatever it is. However, it's a very simple, straightforward looking unit. In fact, I will get rid of this just briefly so you can see the right hand side. So this is all the buttons here displayed on the unit, and there's a fair few things you can do. So you can change the backlighting, you can turn the backlighting on, off, etc. So we'll put it on to test so that we can see, and then I'll bring up the unit as well. Right, and you'll see that when I press the buttons now, on the left hand side you can see that it's coming up with the buttons that are being pressed, and then in the pictorial element, I'm not going too mad, you can see that it's coming up with whatever I'm pressing. So airports, for example, it will come up with the actual screen now, present position, etc. on the unit. But as I say, you can see now that the software on the left is showing a pictorial representation of which button you're pressing by lighting up, so you can actually test all the buttons should you wish. Likewise, if I come over to the right, you can't see it, I can put all the lights on. So you can now see we've got the fail, FM, FM1, IND, ready, etc. all the way across there. You can also see them down on that side. You can also see now we've got the backlighting on for the system as a whole. So that's all demonstrable through that. You can also test individual lights. So if I do the FM, for example, the FM light comes on its own. You can also then test the screen, so you've got various LCD patterns that you can use to test that the colours are what you're expecting. Back to the WinWing page. Oh, there we go. Right, we don't. Let's go back to MCDU menu then, where we started. So as I say, this is a really cool piece of software for checking that nothing's broken, checking that all your lights and your backlighting is working. It's very simple to use. Even if I can use it, it is easy to use. Put it that way. So let's get rid of that because we don't need that now. So the next thing we want to discuss really is compatibility, because the compatibility of this thing is make or break in many respects. I have used this and it's worked fine in X-Plane 12. Because I've used it with the toeless Airbus range, works absolutely fine with them. I've tried it with the Ultimate A320, couldn't get it to work with that. Whether or not it would work with the other flight factor stuff, whether or not the Boeing stuff would work with the other flight factor stuff, I don't know, because I haven't got a Boeing unit to test it. So all I can say is what I've experienced, which is I've used it with the toeless and it's been absolutely fine. The only observation I'd make is there's a slightly longer input lag when you're pressing a button. But having said that, it's not that noticeable, because when you're pressing the buttons you're tending to look down at the unit anyway, rather than at the screen. So let me just shrink that down on my other monitor. So obviously you're pressing things down here. What you're not looking at the screen particularly, but there does seem to be a little bit of tiny bit of lag, but noticeable with the toe list when I've used it. That's my personal experience with my setup. It may be different for others. With regards to the other things that are other options, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024, it's fine with both the Phoenix and the Flight Sim Labs. The default Airbus, so the ones done by AnyBuilds or the default ones within the sim that come free when you buy those sims or when you get those two sims, do not at the moment appear to work with this. I would suggest if that's all the Airbuses you've got, double check on the forums and double check on the Discords before you shell out for this. For me, if you're looking at the level of immersion where you're looking at one of these, you'd probably be also looking at using a Phoenix or an FS Labs in relation to simming anyway. But as I say, the default AnyBuilds / Asobo Airbuses at the moment, when I've tried them, don't work with this. So your options are limited in terms of the aircraft that you can use it with. Likewise, also obviously because of the keyboard layout, etc., it won't work with the Airbus A400, A350. I don't believe it works with that. Or I've had no joy, I should say, and so on and so forth. Out of the box, this works with the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, 2024, Flight Sim Labs and Phoenix. It's worked fine with TOLIS in X-Plane. I do not know about FSX or P3D because I've not tried it in those units. Again, I would go back to the Discords for those relative sims, and or the Discord or web page for the unit itself and for WinWing to try and source that information. But it's been really, really good. So really we come up with the final thoughts on it. In fact, no, we need to have a look at the unit in operation. What am I on about? Okay, so I do apologise for the light shine. I don't have, unfortunately, a fancy studio where I can have lights above it, etc. As I say, it's currently perched on its brown cardboard box I bought it in. But the unit, as I say, we've discussed the build and the nature of the product and the materials. The only final thing is to see how it works. And what I would say is this makes interacting with the aircraft a very natural feeling. It gives a lot more immersion, and it makes it also a lot more efficient because you're less likely to make mistakes. So if I go into the ATSU, I should have a sim brief plan up. I can go to the AOC menu. I can then go and flight initialization on the left. It will come up with this initialize data. I'm not messing around with the mouse. I'm not clicking things. Other advantages are, for example, if I come over here, I can be looking elsewhere in the cockpit and I can still use this. I don't end up being tied to, let me just do, probably better to do this. You know, if I'm looking over here, I can still be looking at the keyboard down here and using this. I don't have to change my view. Makes a huge difference for me. Again, we get back to that immersion factor. There we go. Let's just scoot it along a little bit so we can see it better. So it gets back to that immersion factor. We're all loaded up with our route now, so it's Gatwick to Porto. And we just click back on the AOC menu. It takes us back to that. If we want weather, we go to weather, and then we can put weather request, EGKK, KK, pop that in there. We want the METAR. Yes, send, job done. Message, return. Have we got any received messages yet? No, not yet. Return, receive messages. Yeah, there we go, weather. And you can see it's quick, it's easy, efficient, does exactly what it says on the tin. I've got no issues with this. The display is nice and clear. I don't know how clear it's going to be on the camera, but the display is nice and clear, very legible. No issues with that. If there is lag, it's not noticeable enough that it is something you would highlight. So we'll return with that, go back to the AOC menu. We could do ATC request, don't need to do it. And in this case, we'll go to initialization. We've got the initialization request, init request. Wait a couple of minutes for that to come up. But you can see what I'm on about with the the sort of sense of reality in terms of ABC. 1, 2, 3. You can do it much more quickly than you can do with a mouse. Pop that in there, cost index 20, pop that in there. We'll cruise at 360, and I'm not deliberately being sort of trying to be particularly fast, but you can see the advantages of having this compared to, say, trying to do it all with a mouse. What did we have? It's the Nova 1 X-Ray, I think we had. No, that's Nova 1 mic. See what I mean about the lines sometimes get you. Insert temporary flight plan. We can clear that. Clear that. As you can see, you can hear the clicks as well. They're very obvious and audible. As I say, if you press some in the middle, fine. If you press some slightly off the center, you miss the switch. So even though you're only halfway across, you do need to be in the center. That one's not so bad on the other side, but on that side it's a bit not so great. Get rid of all of that. But you can see now, in terms of the immersion factor, you don't need to end up looking around the cockpit with your mouse and then coming down here and then looking up. And one of the other highlights for me is the fact that I can then sit here and go, you know what, I'm going to have a look up here, and I can look on these instruments here whilst I'm doing something else. So I end up with a situation where I can put that into plan, and now if I go up and down, I can see it changing on my screen. I don't have to worry about that moment we've all had where the mouse moves and you're clicking but you're not on the button. So yeah, in that respect, the physical use of the unit's fine. Well, very good for me. As I say, these buttons are exactly as you would expect, and that's probably one of the biggest things, is it does exactly what you would expect it to do when you would expect it to do it. You know, that's high praise, and after a few uses it becomes second nature. Now, one of the highest praises you can have in terms of something like technology is it becomes so normal to use it and so reliable when you're using it, you stop thinking about it. And so this all of a sudden has become, I'll put it another way, I now look for Airbus aircraft to fly over and above other aircraft because I can use this with it, which is quite a testament to the unit itself. So with that in mind, guys, yeah, is it a recommendation? I think if you like Airbus aircraft and you fly any of the Airbus aircraft products it's compatible with, on a system, I'll mention that actually, I haven't seen any significant system drain, because at the end of the day it's just a button box with a screen on a USB cable. So I haven't seen anything where I've seen it impact on resources of the sim or the computer or anything like that, which is really, really good. So yeah, as I say, the final things for me, physically it's a really well built, strong unit. I don't know how reliable it will be over the long term, and I don't know what their customer service is like because I've not had to use it. But what I've received in the post came in decent time. It's a well-made unit, it's straightforward, it's simple, things like the side legs very good, the mounting options very good, even the tools you get are decent, you know, you're not rummaging through your toolbox to get bits. You know, for the price point, I think it's really very good. If I'm honest, I think it's really, really good. Often hardware falls down because of software. The software in this case is absolutely fine. No issues with the software at all. Everything's been relatively easy, well, very easy to set up, to be fair. So I've not faced any difficulties with that. The only single difficulty that I faced throughout the whole thing was having to go through the global website to order and ship it. So with that, guys, I hope I've demonstrated the unit to the point where you're a little bit better informed about it. And obviously my videos are all about informing and giving constructive or considered feedback, and as a result of that, for me, if you want to fly a particular aircraft, this is not a lot of money for a very good product. You know, I remember the days where it was a monitor and we were trying to set up the monitors in the background, and it was using the resources of one of the monitor ports out the back of the computer, and then you've got to resize it and rotate it and line it all up. I've had that before with a unit that I bought many years ago, and it just completely turned me off trying to use those units. This, however, is very easy to use, very easy to set up, adds a significant level of immersion. If I'm honest, I can't recommend it highly enough. If you're a 737 pilot, it's great for the 737s, I would assume. As I say, compatibility with the 7, I don't know what aircraft it's compatible with, and that's one of the other things is please check everywhere that you can that the unit you're looking at buying is compatible with your sim and aircraft that you intend using it with. There's nothing worse than spending the money and finding out that the aircraft you want to fly it with isn't compatible with this. I haven't seen anything similar to this anywhere near this price point where I would sit there and go, that's awesome. Do you know what I mean? This is just one of the best units I've encountered at that price point. So as I say, guys, I hope that video has been of use to you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to tick like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.